Hey everyone, welcome to Tavern Musings episode 2. So today we're going to be talking over specifically two different trailers that have been released over the past weekend, and they are both games that I am super excited about, so I really wanted to talk to you all about it. So the games are going to be Mass Effect Legendary Edition as well as Warhammer Total War 3. For those of you who haven't played or really experienced either of those games, that's okay. I'm not going to give any spoilers, so feel free to continue listening on. It's just going to be a mixture of what information is currently known, as well as just some of my own personal experiences playing either the Mass Effect franchise or from playing the previous versions of Total War games. So let's start with Mass Effect Legendary Edition. So the trilogy is three different games from the Mass Effect universe, and the general story is that you are Commander Shepard, and you are trying to gather a ragtag crew of some of the best slash worst people in the entire universe in order to try and save the galaxy from this enemy race called the Reapers. And it to me is probably one of the best RPGs in terms of like the story, in terms of the universe it's trying to build for you, in terms of the characters in terms of both how they develop as a character and also how you develop with them as like in a relation. Like, it doesn't have to be romantic. It could be friends, it could be comrades, it could even be somewhat like, begrudging allies, whatever it is. But it really gives you that sense of bonding with them. You grow attached to them over the trilogy. And I think that's something that very few games are able to do correctly. So the Mass Effect Legendary Edition is an attempt to remaster slash kind of remake the original three games. They are scheduled currently to release for May 14th of 2021 on both Steam and Origin, so it's only going to be a PC only release, and it will include all the DLCs that are single player, excluding the Pinnacle Station DLC because apparently they've lost the source code. Like, don't ask me how, but they just did. Although some of the Mass Effects did have multiplayer in it, they have stated that the Legendary Edition is single player focused only. They won't have any multiplayer because I guess like it's just too much in a sense, and it'll like kind of mess up the rest of the stuff they're trying to do. So it will be single player only. You'll experience the whole space sci-fi drama. You will have all the DLCs that include extra characters, weapons, stories, all that kind. I think that that's wonderful, honestly, because there is actually a lot of stories, especially the ones that were released after Mass Effect 2 and before Mass Effect 3, that really kind of helps you bridges the gap a little bit. Like, it shows you like some of the stories of what happened to some of the people, or how are they doing. You meet some random new people, and there's just so many other characters that are actually introduced through DLC that you're really missing out if you don't actually like get to meet them and talk to them and experience them. And they have their own, like, it's not just like one mission or something. They have their own dialogues. They come in with like their own perspective on things, and I think that's like really, really cool. Obviously, because it's called a remaster, it'll come in with all the textures and all the enhanced graphics. It'll be compatible with 4K, HDR, DX11, and everything else in between. So if you're running like a super high-end computer and you want to see like the prettiest thing you can possibly do, good for you. Like, my computer is rusty. I can't do that. But for those of you who can, look forward to it. I think it will be absolutely amazing. Talking specifically about the different Mass Effects, so Mass Effect 1, which is obviously the oldest one within the trilogy, is going to be more of a partial remake than a remaster, simply because Mass Effect 1 was more of a RPG than it was in like a more, how do I say it? Like, Mass Effect 1 was very RPG in the sense that you had your characters, you had stats on weapons, you had all these things that were very character focused. Whereas Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 still had some certain aspects to this, but it was more focused on a more fluid combat system, a more like just run and gun or like cover shooting system, and not so much that like and there wasn't as much like emphasis on like the weapons that you're using. Like, there wasn't different types of the same weapon. There's a variety of weapons, sure, but like they just didn't focus too much on the RPG aspect. So, and also they had a different HUD and also a different just a general like outlook on the system. And obviously, because it was the oldest one, the graphics are the most dated. So for what they've done with Mass Effect 1 is that they've basically changed it so that it's going to be a lot more like a remake. So there's going to be a different HUD. It's going to be a little bit more seamless with Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, so that if you're new and you're playing Mass Effect 1, you won't get that confused when you look at this Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 and be like, well, what the hell is going on with the system? Like, I don't understand, or something like that. So I think that's really good. At least it'll provide like a seamless transition. You'll understand how the system works. You'll understand, like you can learn to read the screen really quickly and adapt to it. And I look forward to it. Like, I really do. I look forward to, because Mass Effect 1 wasn't obviously the perfect game. It had a lot of flaws. And I'm interested to see how they're going to manage to fix it. How they're going to manage to polish it so that it can transition seamlessly into Mass Effect 2 and 3. Another thing about the Mass Effect 1 that they are fixing is the Mako surface vehicle. So for those of you who haven't played the game before, when you basically are in command of your own little spaceship, and you're going to be visiting different worlds. And while you visit worlds, you're for those worlds specifically that, for example, might have a very hazardous environment, you're going to be using a land vehicle. It's called the Mako. In the original game, the Mako basically had really pinball-like physics, like where you could just bounce everywhere. Literally, it's like you're literally a pinball. For those of you who play pinball machines, you should understand this. They've promised to remake the physics system for it, which I think is great because, it's like a quality of life thing. It's not game breaking. It's not going to change entirely your quality of playing this game as a whole, but it's just like a little kind of thing that a lot of people used to complain about, and they've heard you and they're going to remake it a little bit, which I appreciate. For Mass Effect 2, from what I understand, other than like graphical changes and updates, one of the main things they were talking about is the morality system. So the morality system is, in this game, you can do more like good and bad things, like similar to like Dungeons and Dragons or other RPG games. You have a choice of making good decisions or bad decisions. Like, for example, if you beat an enemy, do you spare them, let them go, or do you shoot them and kill them? And these will reflect both on your characters and later on what options you can do. For example, if you've been, an asshole the entire game and you've been shooting and killing everybody, it won't allow you to say nice things later on in the game, just because your character is not that person. Like, you wouldn't suddenly see him saying, oh, I care for you, and say like really soft, nice things to people. That just isn't gonna fly. One of the things about Mass Effect 2's morality system was that it was very strict, in the sense that to be able to unlock certain options later on in the game, you literally were almost required to only select one side. Like, basically at the start of the game, you had to choose, am I a Paragon or am I a Renegade? Am I good or am I bad? And you basically had to choose every single one of those options, because otherwise, when you reach the end game and had to make really important decisions, you wouldn't be able to make them because you didn't have enough Paragon or you didn't have enough Renegade stats. And in a way, it kind of limited the amount of choices you have. Like, even though you had like those like speech circles where you can choose which option you could take, you really didn't have a choice, because as soon as you saw Paragon or Renegade options, you're like, okay, I have to choose those because those give me points, which later on are going to be important, that will impact my decision later on. So apparently what they've said is they kind of nerfed it so that it doesn't require basically almost every single option to be Paragon or Renegade. You can still have some meandering, a little bit more leeway. Obviously, you're still going to fundamentally have to lean towards one side or the other. So I think that's okay. I think that's really good, because at least provides me some freedom of options, and it's not as punishing in a sense, especially for new players who really don't understand these kind of things, and you're just like, oh, I just want to say I would say what I would want to say. That's what an RPG is, right? You act like you're yourself, and you get to choose. Sometimes I want to say some good things, sometimes I just want to say some bad things or do some bad things, whatever it is, right? So I appreciate the fact that you have some freedom in that aspect. Mass Effect 3, they didn't really speak too much about it other than the graphical updates. However, they did say one point is that the ending will not change, and they will keep to the canon of the extended cut ending that they released shortly after they released the game. So for those of you who don't understand, when the game first came out, a lot of people, including myself, were very, very unhappy with the ending. The reason, to summarize, was being that the game was advertised to us in a way where like our choices mattered. So you have to be very careful with your choices because your choices will reflect the ending you get. And basically the ending at the time that it was released didn't give us that option. It gave us practically the same ending. And so everyone was really pissed. So basically what happened was BioWare later on released a free DLC that was called the Extended Cut, and it kind of added a little bit to the ending. Like they still maintained their options. Like the fundamental ending was the same, but they at least gave us more closure in the sense. But like they gave you some like an epilogue, like just like a little speech at the end that says like, oh, this happened, this happened. It provided again like a sense of closure for a lot of players. I guess some people were hoping that somehow like with the new release of this legendary edition they'll change the ending, but they said that no, we're not. We're gonna keep that as a canon ending. And so basically that's what everyone's gonna get. And I honestly, like I'm okay with it. I would say that, like the ending is very controversial. But honestly, if the game has been released this long and you're releasing a remastered edition for this, you might as well keep the ending. Like, like it's been so long. If you suddenly change it, I feel like it's actually gonna make everything worse. So I think keeping the ending right now is actually like a good decision. Like it should be what it is, basically. The customization for Commander Shepard is going to be expanded. So basically, when the game first came out, I guess there were like more limited options in how you wanted Commander Shepard to look. And since Commander Shepard is literally the character you'll be playing for 3 different games, it stands to reason that you want it to look like the character that you want it to look like, whatever that may be. So the expanded customization is a welcome choice so that you can really pick the character, because the good thing is that you actually can transition the saves. So when you play Mass Effect 1, you transition that save to 2 and then to 3, and your choices actually carry over. So for example, let's say, I don't know, for some reason you killed somebody and that character could be like a semi-important character. They actually won't appear in the rest of the game. Or if you make a bad decision, or if you screw someone over, and like they will come back later in the game and like talk to you about it. It's like it really gives you the sense that your choices have consequences, basically, and it gives you a sense of realness that you're still playing the same character. So having the expanded customization, excellent thing. Make the Commander Shepard of your dreams, and be able to live through the experience. Overall, to close off the whole thing, I am super excited for the game. I have played all of it. I've memorized all of it. I've replayed all of it, and I still will buy it just because this game is just so iconic to me. It's probably like, even though it's not really too much of an RPG anymore, like to me, it's like probably one of the best RPGs I've ever played. I've never played a game where I have been so attached to characters. Like I play other games, and I see a character die, I'm like, oh shoot, whatever. I'll find someone else to replace my party. No, this game, dude, if I see a character die that I actually like, dude, I'm reloading the save to go save that character and find a way to save that character. Like, this ain't gonna happen on my watch. It just really shows how much you get emotionally invested into the game, into the universe, and into the people you make friends with, or enemies with, in a sense, like throughout the game. So being able to experience all of that is in like even on also like in better graphics is going to be amazing. It just adds to that realism, that kind of thing. For those of you who haven't played the game before, I highly recommend you buy it. It's really, really, really worth your money. Like, even if you're only going to play through it once, like I've played through it many times, but even if you're going to play through it just once and it's just experience the whole drama for yourself, just once, play through it, whatever, I would still argue that for almost anyone, it's worth the price. So I do encourage you to go and grab it. I am kind of sad that the multiplayer isn't coming back, because the multiplayer was actually quite interesting. It's more of like, it is kind of like a wave defense where like you just deployed on a mission and you have to use your abilities to basically survive against waves of monsters. But I really liked it. I guess maybe at that time I was just still like very into the whole thing, so anything Mass Effect was going to get my attention anyway. But the multiplayer was really fun for me, and I am really sad that we don't get to see it. But then again, the main, like, I would say almost 90% of what makes Mass Effect absolutely amazing, 95 almost, is the single player campaign. So you're not really losing too much when they remove the multiplayer. So I do still encourage you to go buy it. There is also a collector's box that they are releasing that's, like it's almost like a collector's edition kind of thing. Lots of good like physical products. There's an amazing looking N7 helmet there. Kind of tempted to buy it. Probably can't because I'm broke. But for those of you who are interested in buying it, just as a pre-warning, it states on the thing, but it does not include the game. Okay? So if you buy the box, you still have to buy the game. Keep that in mind, because I was tempted and I saw it didn't include the game. So I was like now I'm a little bit iffy about it basically. But yeah, I'm super excited for it. I can't wait for May when it comes out, and I will definitely replay the whole thing like on launch again. When it releases, I'm replaying the whole thing from beginning to end. So if you are interested in watching me play it, subscribe so that you can keep track of when I'm gonna play it. I will also be probably streaming it live on twitch.tv/Zoroth Gaming. So if you are interested in that as well, come by, leave a follow, and come experience the Mass Effect universe with me again. So the next game we're going to be talking about is Warhammer Total War 3. So Total War is a very popular franchise by Creative Assembly, and it basically focuses on large-scale RTS combat, turn-based RTS combat. So there's two portions of the game, basically. There's a world map version where you are like, the Lord controlling your armies, moving around, maneuvering cities, building stuff. And then there's an RTS mode where like you dive into the part where your armies are fighting each other and you maneuver troops, hundreds if not thousands of units on the map at the same time, and you're just smashing them and like trying to find a way to fight them. And Warhammer is their collaboration with Sega, where they are just using the Warhammer IP from Games Workshop. So it'll be a fantasy-based game, an old world full of magic, monsters, all sorts of mythical creatures like undead, dragons, ogres, all that kind of things. So it is, as the name states, the third game in the trilogy. It is apparently also going to be the final game in the trilogy, which makes sense. And for those of you who actually haven't played Total War 1 or 2, I do also encourage you to try them out if you are into the RTS genre. If you're into mainly RPG games, then probably this isn't going to be your cup of tea. But if you are into RTS games, you want to lead large armies, build an empire, slowly expand your territory, use all sorts of mythical creatures almost any you can possibly think of in a sense, this is worth it. It's a really amazing game. And the cool bit is that there is this campaign mode called Mortal Empires, which basically encompasses, it's almost like a world basically. And you have so much stuff to conquer, and there's so much stuff to fight, and it's just absolutely amazing. So we're going to talk about Total War 3 today. For those of you who aren't really familiar with the Warhammer universe, this is going to be a little bit confusing for you, because what I'm going to be talking about is mainly under the assumption that you are going to be familiar at least with the Warhammer IP from Games Workshop. For those of you who aren't, I'm going to try my best to give you some sort of like explanation in the simplest form possible. But generally speaking, I would advise you to at least learn a little bit about it. So be warned. So the game will be released later this year. We don't exactly know when. And there will be 6 starting factions. There will be the 4 Chaos Gods, which will be Khorne, Slaanesh, Zinc, and Nergo, as well as 2 human-ish factions called Kislev and Cathay. So Kislev is inspired by more Russian civilization, so it's more like hussars riding like snow bears and using this kind of like Arctic magic or whatever these things is. And Cathay is going to be more based off of old China. I don't really exactly know what they're going to be looking like, because the cool thing about it is that these 2 factions are not covered in terms of models in the Warhammer world. So Warhammer, for those of you who don't know, is a miniature game. So Kislev and Cathay are actually not in their product range. It's only mentioned in lore, in the books, in games, or something like that. But it's not actually like in their model range. Though there are rumors that they are producing a Kislev army right now for the future releases, but right now, currently at least, there's not really much information of them. And The four chaos gods are, as they say, they're gods of the realm of chaos, and they're usually trying in an eternal war to try and kill each other. They're trying to basically be the last god standing. And so they play games by usually either fighting each other, or they send their influences into the world and try to fight each other through that. So Korn is the god of like blood and skulls. So they prioritize mainly melee combat. They kind of really hate magic. They hate magic a lot. They have like a lot of anti magic. And they're mainly pride strength, chaos, like killing people, offering their skulls to the skull throne. Like imagine like the Predator. And that's basically what it is. Zinc is the god of plots, so they like to plan endlessly. They are also like the god of knowledge in a sense. They offer knowledge to wizards. They say, do you want forbidden knowledge? We'll give it to you, but there's always a price. And they're also the god of change. So they also really like mutations, like mutating everything, changing things constantly, And they are more of the sorceress faction. They're very heavy on focused on using magic. They have an affinity for flame as well. A lot of their creatures usually spit flame as an attack. And they're more of just like a scheming faction. Slanesh is the prince of, I believe it's like decadence and pleasure. So they're more like the indulgence kind of faction. They believe in this perfection, pleasure through pain. So a lot of their creatures are more like this weird aesthetically pleasing thing, which is not exactly aesthetically pleasing, but like it's kind of like a warped sense of it. And their focus is on overindulgence, a lot of pain, a lot of pleasure, a lot of excess. They like excessive things. When you're excessive, they're happy. And lastly, god Nergo is the god of basically plagues. Nergo is known to be like a very like grandfather character who really cares about their followers, but they usually in their care in a sense is literally corrupting you with plagues, because the plagues will make you stronger, but you'll also become like this bloated fly surrounding kind of monster in exchange. So each of these chaos gods offer that their own powers, their own strengths with their own prices basically. Total Assembly has stated that this range is going to be containing their most diverse collections of monsters, heroes, units, everything in there. And I think that makes perfect sense, considering all four Chaos Gods have their own different units, their own different stuff. They're very distinct. And I would imagine that the Kislev and the Cathay factions are also very distinct. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like I'm looking forward to see what good units they conjure up, how we're going to be able to manage all these kind of things. My speculation obviously is that the demons, the lords characters, the ones who are actually going to be leading the armies, are probably going to be some like greater demons, demon princes, maybe some sort of herald, maybe some named characters that they either make up, or some popular ones from the franchise that they're going to use. So I am looking forward to just leading the Chaos God to war basically. And other quick information also is that they will be news that they are including this giant map that you'll be able to play Warhammer 3 into the Mortal Empire campaign. So for those of you who own Mortal Empires 1, Mortal Empires 2, and Mortal Empires 3, you're going to have a ginormous continent, like not even continent, like a world to conquer. Like it's going to be borderline insane. Like a playthrough is going to take you like weeks, if not months, unless you obviously are like using some sort of strat. But if you're just playing like normally per se, it's gonna take you a long damn time to conquer a lot of stuff, which I look forward to. Honestly, I think that's absolutely fantastic. I will be interested to see what the lands are gonna look like when there's 4 chaos gods and 2 random human factions fighting. From the trailer, we can see that it looks like some northern waste kind of like a frosty, like wintry kind of place. So we're gonna see how that basically pans out. Yeah, we're gonna see how it pans out. Basically, it's gonna be exciting to see like what lands we're gonna be able to conquer. Also, another thing to note is that all the Warhammer games in the Total War franchise, they have a lot of DLC. So these DLCs can range anything from new leaders, new faction leaders that you can use that give you distinct traits, to entirely new factions that they will release over time. And since they have claimed that they want to include every single faction that's ever been released in the Warhammer world, at least in terms of like models and stuff, that we have expectations that they're going to be possibly releases of other factions in the future, like Chaos Dwarves and other stuff like that. So definitely for those of you who are looking to buying in, there will be DLC. Even for the other ones, there's at least like a dozen or if not 20 different DLCs. For the faction ones, I would argue that the DLCs are almost definitely worth it. For the Lord ones, it really depends on if you like the faction. Like if they release like an elven leader, right? But you don't like elves, then don't buy it. It's that simple. It won't really hinder your gameplay in any way. If you, for example, see an orc leader and you really want to play orcs, then yeah, by all means, go for it. Like that's basically how the game's gonna. In terms of some, I guess you can say, overall thoughts about it, I am really looking forward to it. Creative Assembly and Sega have basically had an excellent track record for at least producing the games for the Warhammer Total War franchise. The factions in there are amazing. The gameplay is amazing. And the thing I love the most is that the factions are really, really lore friendly. Like they really stick to the lore. They have a lot of, whether it's their skills, their play styles, their armies, their units, they're all really connected to the lore of the faction, so it makes it really feel like, for those of you who have played the tabletop game or even in general just are interested in the Warhammer universe, this feels like that faction that you've been reading about, which I think is actually excellent. So, and given that their record is so good, I have absolute faith that Warhammer Total War 3 is going to be absolutely amazing as well. Here we are going to move into some speculation in terms of what the game is going to look like. So this part here is not confirmed. It's just basically my thoughts and my opinions of what could possibly happen. So first thing I'm going to think of is, why is there two very unfortunate human factions that are in the same expansion as 4 Chaos Gods? Like the 4 Chaos Gods are kind of the ultimate semi-evil bad guys in this world, basically, in this game. And they're gods, they're omnipotent, basically almost, and their armies are practically infinite. So what poor soul decided to have two human factions settled in the same local area as them, right? And it also is kind of weird to me, because to me the Chaos Gods wouldn't have their own territory. It's more like they're subtly just affecting the world as a whole. They're corrupting races. They're sending their legions out just to do some certain things, but it doesn't sound to me like it would be like a, Khorne is building a land of blood and skulls. Yeah, it'd be cool, but technically speaking, it's I think for me, what's gonna happen as a speculation is that, they're gonna terraform, basically. So what happens is that Chaos Gods will exert influence. In the game, there's already Chaos influence. So what I think is that they're going to have their own particular type of Chaos influence. For example, Khorne's influence, Zinc's influence, etc., etc. And what's going to happen is, as your influence, or maybe in terms of your worship, your power, whatever, your devotion, as they increase, your land is going to expand. You're not going to expand through natural means where you take a city or you take a certain location and you expand it and you hold the territory. That's not going to happen, and at least that's what I'm imagining. It'd be more like, as your faith expands, your lands expand, and you get access to territories that worship you, basically, and you turn them into your own bastions, into your own cities, into your own ideal of what your world is going to look like. At least I think that's what's going to happen. I hope it does, because otherwise it kind of feels weird to me that a Chaos Gods faction is going to take a city at a time and just slowly build their thing. It just sounds kind of weird to me. I want to see more of the aspect of Chaos corruption and how they corrupt mortal races, rather than the Chaos Gods forces themselves, because that to me is kind of boring in a sense. I like to speculate what their play style is going to be, because every race has their own different play styles. For example, Dark Elves. Dark Elves are known to be very a cutthroat society. They're not exactly loyal. They more so bend to power. So for example, if there are generals, for example, in your army that are stronger than your lord in terms of leveling, they might actually become disloyal, and they might actually turn rogue in a sense and betray you because you're just not strong enough. And another, for example, would be Bretonnians. Bretonnians are like King Arthur. Think King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table, Camelot. They run on chivalry, so they can't do dishonorable things. They can't go into ambush, they can't pillage and raid, and it gives you this almost like a shackle on what you can do, and it's fair because that's their faith. That's what they have to do. But you also get, of course, bonuses to balance out these negative traits, basically. And I'm always thinking, like, what would the four Chaos Gods look like? I'm not going to speculate much on Kislev and Cathay because I don't know much about them, honestly. I've never really read much about them. I've only seen some random images about them. And so I can't exactly say what is going to go on there. So I can only speculate. But for the four Chaos Gods, I at least have a rough idea how they're going to be. So, for example, I think Khorne is going to be very similar to the Orcs, where you constantly have to be fighting. If you're not fighting, you're doing something wrong. If you're not fighting, the god's going to be angry at you and something bad's going to happen to you. You have to constantly offer skulls, and I guess like the more champions you get, the more buffs you get. For example, if I offer the skull of a champion, it's worth more than a skull of a soldier. So if I offer a skull of a champion, I might get some certain buffs. I might get, better creatures, bonus money, or whatever it is that I'm going to get. For Slaanesh, I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to be something really crazy where it's like, because they're about excess and indulgence. So maybe, for example, and about like adoration, like if the more people love you, how much they like you is going to factor into your power. So for example, I think maybe they could be more diplomatic or race. So for example, the more faction leaders that like you, the more your power will be because everyone adores you, everyone gives you their attention. Or maybe if you spend any resource, whether you're recruiting units, building buildings, casting a spell, whatever it is, if you spend more than you should, you get a bonus. I think that's what indulgence brings up to my mind, right? And it would be interesting, right? Because then you'd have to measure between, do I want to spend $2,000 and build this building, or do I want to spend $3,000 and build this building? I'm gonna lose $1,000, but I'm gonna get some sort of chaos power for it. Like the gods will smile upon me for my overindulgence in spending because I'm like pimping up the building or something, like I'm plating it in gold or something. Nergo, I think, is going to be very specifically plague based. So most likely your agents are going to be able to spread plagues, and the more plagues you spread, the more powerful your plagues become. As I spread it across to, like more cities, more armies, more heroes, whatever it is, Nergal is going to reward me with more powerful plagues. So maybe let's say this one only reduces people's movement. They walk slower, they're tired, and then later on as you get more, these ones will actually start killing people. Or worse, they'll turn them into your own armies. You'll turn them slowly into Nurglings or like Nurgle beasts or whatever, right? Or I forgot what their normal poxwalkers, I think they're called. No, those are whatever. You get my point. Like they slowly corrupt people into the basically into the things. And it's gonna be like a big slowly spread plague, make everything uninhabitable. And I guess it's also like a bonus for if you capture a city and later on someone recaptures it from you, they'll suffer more penalty than average just because the whole city is now plague ridden. They not only have to deal with the whole population or like whatever, they also have to deal with plagues, which I think makes sense, right? And then Zinch to me is like the hardest because Zinch is all about manipulation. Zinch is all about planning, right? So what I think is going to happen is there's a few things that can happen. I think, for example, that one of the most, I guess, like ambitious thing that I would think of in terms of that is you are able to set a goal for yourself. Depending on how hard the goal is, Zinch will reward you differently if you succeed. For example, let's say I'm at one city. I'm very weak. I have a very small army. I'm going to put a goal and say I'm going to capture someone's capital, which is 3 times the strength of mine. Zinch will probably look at it and say, that's crazy. I love it. It's like, that's a crazy plan. I can't wait to see what you're going to do. And if you succeed, they'll reward you with maybe I'll reward you with with an army of demons, or I'll give you a lot of gold, a lot of resources. And but of course, if you don't, you'll get punished, right? Like that's the thing I'm thinking. Like Zinch is gonna be more focused on like just planning stuff, or like maybe for example, you might have to be able to manipulate people. For example, the goal, they might give you a mission and say you have to make this guy who hates you enter a trade agreement with you. And usually in terms of AI, unless they like you, or at least they are on good relations with you, they will never trade with you because most likely they'll just go to war with you, right? So the fact that you can convince them somehow to trade with you is a sense of manipulation, basically. So maybe, for example, if Zinch might give you random missions saying, make this leader like you, or capture this city, or do something to obstruct the plans of this army, whatever it is, and then they'll reward you accordingly by just planning stuff. Like, you're not actually going to be focused on conquering or doing anything, but you're just by doing plots, because that's what Zinch is. Zinch loves to plot. Zinch plots 24/7. So if you could do well in those plots, then it's going to be great, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic, basically. So yeah, this concludes the episode for Tavern Musings this time. It is a little bit on the shorter side because not too much to cover, basically just information, very limited information that we're given, and then some speculation on top of that. Overall, I am looking very much forward to these two games. I think they're both going to be absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to play them, basically. For those of you who have played any of these games, let me know what you think about in the comments below. Do you think it's gonna be a good game? Do you think it's gonna be a bad game? What do you want to see in the game? Put it down in the comments. Have a discussion, because I'm open to it too. I want to know what you guys think you want the game. Maybe, for example, Mass Effect, you wanted the ending changed. Why would you, and then here you might want to be like, I think the Chaos Gods factions are going to do this, or I have a guess what the Kislev and Cathay factions are going to be like. Let me know in the comments down below. I really am interested to see what you guys are thinking. And for those, for anyone else, if it's your first experience playing these games, or you haven't played these games at all, let me know. Like, what are you looking forward to? Are you interested? Why or why not? I'm really interested to hear your opinions on what these games are going to be like for you, and what's your impressions of them so far. For those of you who saw, I did put their trailers on the screen beside me. If you want to watch full trailer by yourself with all the audio and stuff like that, I have put their links to the in the description below, so feel free to go check them out. I think they're amazing videos. And if you enjoyed this podcast, I would appreciate it if you would leave a like here. It would mean a lot to me. And regardless, though, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.